Hello, everyone, and welcome to what is my first and possibly last ever recorded video. I'm Easy of EZDFS.xyz fame, a website so great and named after myself that I could barely get it out here out of my mouth. So, what I'm recording for you guys today is a quick, well, we'll see how long it is, but hopefully quick walkthrough of tips and tricks and the way that I use my NFL best ball companion tool and sort of a walkthrough tutorial of how I think you ought to be able to set up and use it pretty easily if you were to subscribe. So we'll start first. It updates. I update it with ADPs and any changes to projections, whether it's news related, trades, free agency. I'm recording this on May 21st, and I imagine my rankings are going to change quite a bit as the preseason goes on. But even so, I think it's always a good idea if you subscribe to start from the site. Here you'll have the sheet, which you'll be able to click open. You could download a CSV with underdog rankings, and they're found here. Same for DraftKings. You could download the CSV, upload it directly to either of those sites if you want to use that and have those available to you as you draft. But here you'll just click to open the sheet. I will do that now. And here's the first possible trip up point. If I were to give everyone access to this sheet, something would break within minutes, most likely, as everyone is trying to do their own drafting. I do use this sheet for my draft. So like at times you'll see players populated here. That's me drafting. So if you want to snipe me or if you want to see what I'm up to, you often will be able to find me there. But the first thing that you ought to do is to go to File and make a copy, and save this on your local drive here. So then you have access. You'll be able to override and write things as needed. So the first tab here is just an update log, so you can see. I'll try and keep this updated as far as major changes that I make. Like I don't know that I'll put when I update ADPs, but if there's any major rankings updates. So we went live on the 17th. We added a couple of things over the past half week or so, and today I'm actually the day I'm recording this, I'm actually launching the ability to import rankings or to draft off of ADP. So 99, if not 100% of what you do will just take place on, one of these three tabs highlighted in blue. And maybe I ought to move myself there for now. Hi, I'm up here up high. So where I predominantly live is this easy build. Let's see if you can see everything. This is basically your draft board in a nutshell. Let me make it. Yeah. So what you do to set up essentially, first pick you're logging into a draft. Your pick number here, 1 through 12, obviously will dictate your draft board, and what that helps with is to let the sheet know what players to expect to be available at certain ADPs. So if we have pick 6 here, like it shows the 5 people before that ADP or before that pick number, and then the 15 to 25 available after that. So we'll do a mock draft, but that's the reason why that's here. If you're playing on Underdog or DraftKings right now, we support both. If there's like huge demand for drafters, like I might add that, but it's not a contest that particularly appeals to me. And I try to support things that I myself play and have skin in the game. So Underdog or DraftKings, like if you were to switch to DraftKings, things would, my rankings would actually change and update real time. So we'll stick an Underdog for now. One thing like to note, basically like the yellow cells are the things you want to just have updated before you go live. Correlation preference. So this is a bit of a either A, trust me, or B, like your personal play style. The contests that you play, I think, are pretty important. So The default here is my recommended for Best Ball Mania, which is the contest that I'm going to spend, most of my thoughts and time tackling. In that specific contest, week 17 matters quite a lot, but I also think week 16 in the fantasy playoffs is pretty important. It's a hard round to advance in the flattening of week 20 payout or week 17 payouts are pretty specific micro decision point this year that didn't exist in years past. But if there's something like if you're playing a different contest like a puppy or a chihuahua where perhaps week 17 is more top heavy, there's different pre-built settings. Something I call week 17 is all that matters. It still gives some extra weighting to weeks 15 and 16, but really correlating week 17 quite a bit. There's like a joke one that's week 17 is literally all that matters. That one's kind of funny and fun. If you are the belief that week 16 matters a lot, and you don't care necessarily as much about week 17, you can do that. Playoff balance might be one that I use, for underdog non Best Ball Mania. I just want to make the playoffs is a funny one where you don't care about, playoff bringbacks at all. If you are that person, I'm not sure how you found me, but welcome. But yeah, maybe if you wanted to use this for drafters, like that could be something as well. Or you can do custom, right? But essentially what you'll do is type in any numbers between 0 and 100%. And then the regular season will be what the regular season correlation is what you don't include there. We'll keep it on recommended BBM, but maybe at some point when we do some drafting, we'll take a look at the differences here. So before you start, that may sound like a lot, but literally all you have to do is you open a draft, you type in your pick number, the site, and what your correlation preference is here, and then you're ready to go. So just to orient yourself, what you'll do as you draft here is in these columns, or in this column, you'll just type in your player. So you're on the clock, it's pick 4, Jamar Chase. Right, you just start typing and you can pre-select. Now, a couple minutes goes by, you're back on the clock in round 2, pick 21. What the sheet intends to do is tell you, there's a possibility that Brandon Ayuk or Jonathan Taylor are ADP 16 and 17 have fallen. If for some reason, let's say, I'll try and zoom out so you can see a little bit more at a time. If for some reason Jahmyr Gibbs has fallen, I have a couple of cells here where you can type in, player names and see how they compare. So like if Jahmyr Gibbs were to fall, he's not listed here, but like I have him at rank 12 adjusted. So he would be the pick here. So now you can evaluate and see, the top recommendations based on, my rankings, my projections, be Devontae Adams. But, there's something new added this year, is this little tier. It's sort of mathematically derived of when there's a certain fall off point in projections. I think about 7.5%, sort of arbitrary, but doing some testing, it looked fairly decent. So yeah, I do have Devontae Adams as my highest ranked player, but even just looking at the projection here, like him versus Olave are pretty neutral here. Then you have, guys like Debo and Ayuk next, but like this, whenever you see yellow is where I have a tier break. So I basically at this pick, is this 6 players that are all fairly equivalent. You can't go wrong. Actually, even up to Mike Evans, I think is all one tier, and then it drops off a bit to Nico Collins, who I think then drops off a bit to Achane. So like you can essentially take your pick here. Like I'll just go Adams. Well, Adams is, ADP 19. We'll stick with guys at ADP or below. So Debo at ADP 22 would be the pick here. Now you're back on the clock. This is why you type in the pick number. Cause like if you were to, leave this stale for some reason, the last draft was pick 9, it's going to not calculate your pick numbers correctly. So yeah, then you're back on the clock. Let's make like one or two more picks here before I show the next thing. Sam Laporta. So this is an interesting one, right? Where I have him ranked pick 30th. His ADP is 29, so more or less in line with ADP, but it's going to be really interesting this year to see if Sam Laporta comes up in ranking closer to the 1-2 turn because of the week 17 stacking with San Francisco. So I actually have him getting a small, 1% boost paired with Deebo Samuel in this specific situation, which bumps him from my rank 30 up to my rank 25. But when you make that pick, it not only helps Sam Laporta to have Deebo, but it helps Deebo to have Sam Laporta, right? So now Deebo has gone from my rank 16 up to my rank 14. You already made the pick, so this is more just for like illustrative, like fun purposes, but interesting to to note, and also because I find early values are fairly flat. Having little 1 or 2% boost does separate some players fairly meaningfully as far as tiebreakers, but all up to you. Ultimately, you're responsible for the buttons that you click, but this is definitely the recommendations that I have based on my testing and my usage, looking at historical position correlations for teammates and for opponents in single game situations and for the season. So next up at pick 45 here. Oh, this is a great time to point out. I spent a lot of time in my rankings looking at projections, player archetypes for spikiness, like certain profiles. Think of Mike Evans as an example of someone who scores touchdowns more than someone like Chris Godwin. So a baseline projection might not fully capture the upside difference on a week-to-week basis, where the spikiness of a profile such as Mike Evans, who scores a lot of touchdowns, but also so it's projections and late breakout such as rookies that score more points towards the end of the fantasy season, which is when we really care about production for these contests. So I take all of that into account and compare that versus the available player pool and versus historical scoring benchmarks for each position. So that's basically how the rankings are derived. And then the rankings are dynamically resorted based on the correlations of the players you've already selected. Meaning Jamar Chase is on your team in scenarios where you're happy with the Jamar Chase pick. That means that T. Higgins, in all likelihood, is not going to be a super optimal pick where it's going to be really hard for them to both pay off in the same week. T. Higgins is going to have to beat, Amari Cooper, Tank Dell, Keenan Allen, players around him in order to really separate and help you win still top heavy contest. If you have Jamar Chase, however, Joe Burrow, correlates super highly with Jamar Chase and becomes a really important piece to add. And if you were to add T. Higgins here, it is negative correlation. We could do it just for illustrative purposes. T. Higgins, and eventually we'll go down and pretend that we pick Joe Burrow here. Now you've flipped what was a negatively correlated Chase and Higgins into quite positively correlated, because now you've bet on Joe Burrow in this being a blow up game where Burrow goes for 303 or 4 touchdowns, whereas it's hard for just Chase and Higgins to get there without Burrow also getting there. Hopefully that makes sense. But the reason I actually got onto this rant, and I suppose you could say this entire video is a rant, but I take into account projections and positions, right, for the rankings. The recommendations will just take, there is essentially a score based on position, like a player's value versus, essentially replacement player by position, and plus or minus correlation. So what that leads to, it is just a, one number recommendation. What it doesn't do is know that, let's say we were to take a quarterback instead of T. Higgins. Let's say we were to take Lamar Jackson. Let's say for some reason Patrick Mahomes falls and you've decided that this is a good pick here. And then now you're back on the clock here, and Joe Burrow is at the top of the rankings. I will say, like, this is like a super weird case, but just to illustrate, Burrow is going to be a really good pick on Jamar Chase teams. However, Joe Burrow is probably not a good pick on a team that already has Lamar and Patrick Mahomes. So there's a little bit of steering that I think needs to take place for this tool to really shine. But I try to point you in the right direction. So something that Mike Leone researched for his Best Ball Manifesto were these draft capital allocations by position. This first bucket would be the top 80 or the top 20 percentile. 8 percentiles 80 through 100 as far as draft capital allocation. So that's all based on the draft picks. It's in like super light gray font, so it doesn't distract you because the numbers don't necessarily matter. But essentially, in this made up scenario where you've drafted 2 elite quarterbacks, which I don't recommend doing very often, if at all, you've already spent like more than the top 20th percentile allocation at quarterback. So I try and color code it. Basically, you're already at the bright green, so you've like overdone it and then some here. So Joe Burrow doesn't become super meaningful for this team and probably is quite a bad pick. However, you probably aren't going to have Lamar and Patrick Mahomes. But things to keep in mind here: the recommendations on the right, they know who you've selected as far as teammates and opponents. It doesn't take positions explicitly into account. So we'll go back here. Let me just draft. Let me just draft Lamar. Mark Andrews becomes a really good pick, right? Burrow, Kittle. But like, here's one where, we've gone to tight end, so maybe Andrews wasn't the right pick here. We'll go Pacheco or something. So here's one where, Burrow and Kittle both grade really well from a correlation perspective, but you've already invested in those positions. So, there's a bit of a decision, right? I think Burrow would be a fine pick here. He's a super great grade here, but, you can't go wrong with like Rome Odunze or Godwin or something like that. But anyway, all right. So now that we've selected, a number of players here, primarily you can get 90% of what you want here to make your next draft pick. But something that I really like, and I learned some people, didn't know this was here. If you scroll down to the bottom right, this essentially is, and I'll see if I can zoom in while we're just highlighting this piece. This is a list of all players that are after your next available pick that are correlated to the players currently on your roster. It's essentially this list, but for the whole remainder of the draft and only looking at correlation. So if you're familiar with the infamous Davis-Maddox star method, this is essentially your star method ranked and sorted for you. There's a lot of different, like we've made, is it like 6 or 7 picks here? So there's a whole slew of players, teammates, and 3 weeks worth of opponents that you can correlate from, right? So Joe Burrow, the quarterbacks always grade, pretty pretty well. Like they'll stick out. They'll stick out off the page here. I'll take a sip here. Like the quarterbacks are always going to be, super green, but then you have guys like David Montgomery. We made 2 investments in the San Francisco Detroit game, some small correlations, but this is essentially one way to kind of help you roadmap the rest of your draft and understand the players that you might want to target in at which pockets, right? So Jared Goff is in ADP 121. So, you can go and look at like, Jared Goff might be someone that we're looking to pencil in at pick, 117. This is something that I'll often do, is sort of roadmap or blueprint, certain like super important picks for me. So like, Jared Goff, you can even perhaps get Jameson Williams here or even at pick 93. And now you're really cooking, and see what the impact is going to be for your Sam Laporta pick, right? prior to adding Goff, this game you had, a decent investment in, but only 2 players, right? Decent draft capital, but only 2 players. But now you add Goff and JMO, and, it really makes these, 2 picks shine. So, yeah. And then you could start to look at, if I were to fill in with running backs here, and I'm not like, I'm just making up guys at random, like Zeke. I'll try and think of other later picks, like Charbonnet or something like that, right? And you could see, like, if you were to do that, you'll still be pretty behind in running back capital. So this is like a good way. Right now, essentially, is basically I'm doing a mock draft, but within a draft, you can start to outline who your prospects and targets are and how your team might look as you fill out the roster. Another thing that I've seen someone bring to my attention that I thought was super cool. Let me add Chris Godwin here, just so we have other pass catchers. This has 20 rows because when I flip to DraftKings, there's a 20 round draft. So these last 2 should populate, right? But you can just go into like empty cells, or not empty cells, but like, it doesn't have to be in the correct draft spot. But like, if you want to just see what, Baker Mayfield looks like, Caleb or whoever else, and how will your team look if you stack certain players. So it doesn't even have to be in the correct spots, but if you just want to get an idea of how your early picks will grade out if you continue to invest, in those picks by making supplemental picks in support. So yeah, that's essentially it. As far as, the easy build tab, this here is going to be like a running tracker of the teams that you've drafted, an account of players per team, your week 17 bringbacks, week 16, week 15. So, so far on this team of 6, we have this San Francisco Detroit game. So like we can go in and I'll just like try and quickly mock this out. I don't know if this team is going to be good or reasonable or not. Probably need to add some running backs. I'm just going quickly off of the right here. So we're going to need some running back investment. We continue to need running back investment. Mims. Isaiah likely to back up Lamar Jackson. Devontae Walker. And then we can finish off with a couple of running backs, Tank Bigsby and Braylon Allen. Sure, why not? Yeah, so here's just like a random team filled out. So, oh wow, and this has a lot of different people, so I need to adjust my formatting. So essentially what we've done here, as far as like a recap, is we've drafted, I don't know how many different teams this is, 14. 3 Ravens, 2 Bears, 2 Seahawks. As far as bringbacks, we actually didn't bring anything back for Baltimore because I just did that draft with roughly 0 thought in 15 seconds. Chicago, Seattle, we have a bring back for Tennessee, whoever they play. So organically, like without putting much thought in, just looking at names and positions that I was looking to target pretty quickly, you get a decent amount of correlation built in for weeks 17, 16, and 15. So hopefully that was a good example of showing you, how the rankings dynamically update as you go through, and lead you to pretty good roster constructions, or at least what I think are, good, meaningful, or thoughtful projections and correlations for the playoffs. But, if you were to go in, let's say here, not on auto draft like I was, and you say, oh, I have 3 Baltimore Ravens and I don't have any week 17, so they play in week 17 Houston. Is Dameon Pierce going sooner than this? Yes, like Dameon Pierce would be a really interesting way. Someone I'm not super high on, but if you were to have gone down here and tried to look at, Houston players, yeah, Dameon Pierce seems to be the highest remaining, or Noah Brown even. right? So you could, in theory, if you want to target week 17 specifically, I suppose like another way would be like halfway through, you say, "Oh, week 17 is literally all that matters." I don't know if it's enough because Houston is not that good of a team, but yeah, like the correlation boosts are going to go super up for Houston in these scenarios. But there's no one really good enough on Houston, so maybe a weird example. But try and like Isaiah Likely and Devontae Walker, like teammate correlation when you have a quarterback is super high for week 17. So yeah, so that's basically if you were to draft using my rankings, that is how I would do it. Now, what's brand new, and I wanted to throw out a quick tutorial here, would be for drafting off of rankings or ADP. So I've spent a good bit of time trying to, essentially the reason why this is so difficult, my projections drive the rankings that I do in all the dynamic rankings. And I feel really good about the correlations and research over years of data of teammates within a single season, within a single game, and opponents as well. I feel pretty good about the research I've done there. A bit harder looking at rankings. I don't know what goes into other people's rankings as far as correlating to points, right? So I've spent a good bit of time in something that I want to feel good about before I have you guys using it. So essentially, what you're able to do now, there's this tab here called Import Ranks. If you don't import ranks and you still want to use this, it'll default to ADP. So you'll go in same as you did previously, select Underdog or DraftKings. We'll stick to, we can do DraftKings just to have something a bit different. Well, DraftKings doesn't work, we'll go back to Underdog and I'll see why DraftKings doesn't work before I push the live button. So Underdog, same correlation thing, pick numbers. If you don't paste in ranks, it'll use ADP, right? So these are the current ADP, CMC, LAM, all in order. Let me find some rankings from unnamed site. I won't name the site. I'll download their CSV. So you just go in here and paste anywhere right of this yellow cell is where you'll paste it. So as long as there's a column that has the label ID, it'll auto update. If you paste anywhere to the right of this yellow tab, as long as you have a column that's labeled ID, it could be uppercase or lowercase. I know Underdog is case specific, but this is, I'll hide that so you guys are, don't know who this is, but yeah, you can import if you have your own rankings, as long as you have the player IDs for whichever site it is. If you have DraftKings, it'll pick it up. If you have Underdog, it'll pick it up. Essentially just looks for a column called ID, and then it ranks the players. I've uploaded your favorite rankings that for some reason are not mine. I really like mine, but you pay for subscriptions. You want to be able to use different distributions of rankings and, or you spend your own time. So yeah, let's do another mock draft with these settings and just take a look. Look and feel should be pretty much the same here. It goes ran between 1 and 12. All right. We pick first. Fantastic. CMC it is. So this ranking has Devontae Smith 17th, even though we picked 24. So here's Devontae Smith, and then Jalen Hurts becomes super valuable here, ranked 25, adjusted 15. But something to note here is like Jalen Waddle, ADP that they have him ranked 26. He goes up to 22 with a little bit of week 16 correlation to CMC. But yeah, let's go Jalen Hurts. Pacheco, Probably don't want Mahomes after doing that. We go Christian Kirk, etc. So yeah, look and feel will be the exact same. Same features, same settings, but now you can go in, import your ranks as long as there's a column with the player IDs, either for Underdog or DraftKings. It has to be called literally ID, not case sensitive, but it does have to be called ID. Otherwise, if it's blank or you don't have a column called ID, it will default to ADP for that site. So hope you found that helpful. Any questions? I'm available. I try to make myself available pretty often on the internet. If you find me on Discord, Twitter, EZDFS.xyz. If you go, I'll pull it up now. There's a little chat thing, message easy in the corner. I usually answer, within a couple hours if I'm available. If you ever have any questions, issues, hit me up. If you have not subscribed and this is your first look and feel, hopefully you like what you see. If you ever have, any questions, I'm here. And yeah, that was it. I don't know if I'll ever do one of these again. So 1 of 1 non-live recording. I hope you liked it. I didn't, but thank you. Good luck, and I'll see you in the lobbies these next few months. Adios. Have a good one.